Has this ever happened to you? You're driving along, and suddenly your car's temperature gauge just shoots into the red. Or maybe it's the dead of winter, and your heater is just blowing ice-cold air. Well, today, we're going to pop the hood and figure out the small part that causes these huge, confusing headaches. Yeah, if any of that is ringing a bell, you are definitely not alone. These kinds of frustrating issues almost always point back to one single, tiny, and honestly misunderstood part in your car's cooling system. And that part is the engine thermostat. I know, it doesn't sound very exciting, but this little device is absolutely essential. You can think of it as the unsung hero, constantly working behind the scenes to keep your engine running at that perfect Goldilocks temperature. So what does it actually do? Well, at its heart, it's just a simple heat-sensitive valve. When you first start your car and the engine's cold, it stays shut. This helps the engine warm up nice and fast. Then, once it hits that ideal temperature, boom! The thermostat opens up and lets coolant flow to the radiator to get cooled down. A really great way to picture it is as a gatekeeper. That's its whole job, to manage the flow of coolant with incredible precision. See, if it doesn't let enough coolant through, the engine overheats. But if it lets too much through all the time, the engine never gets warm enough to run efficiently. It's a constant balancing act. So what happens when this little gatekeeper just stops doing its job? Well, your car is going to start giving you some pretty clear clues. Let's dig into the signs that your thermostat might be on its way out. The first and most obvious clues are going to show up right there on your dashboard. You might see that temperature needle climbing way, way too high. Or you could see the exact opposite, where it feels like it never even warms up. Sometimes the gauge just goes crazy, swinging back and forth from hot to cold. You might also hear your radiator fans running constantly, which is them trying desperately to cool an engine that just isn't getting the help it needs from the coolant. And it goes beyond just the gauge. You'll probably feel and hear other things too. A weak heater is a classic sign because hot coolant isn't making it to the heater core in your dash. You might also notice your gas mileage taking a nosedive because a cold engine is an inefficient engine. You should also listen for weird gurgling or boiling sounds. That's literally the sound of overheating coolant. And finally, you might even see a puddle of coolant on the ground, leaking from right around where the thermostat lives. Now, all those different symptoms, they usually boil down to one of two things. The thermostat has failed in one of two ways. It's either stuck open or it's stuck closed. And each of these failures creates a totally different set of problems. Let's break this down. It's like two sides of the same broken coin. If the thermostat gets stuck closed, coolant gets trapped inside the engine block and can't get to the radiator. That's what leads to dangerous overheating, the high temp gauge, and potential leaks. But if it gets stuck open, coolant is always flowing. The engine basically can't warm up, and that's why you get the low temp gauge, a weak heater, and really bad fuel economy. Okay, so you've got the clues, and you suspect the thermostat is the culprit. How does a mechanic actually confirm it without having to take half the engine apart? Well, they've got a really simple and, more importantly, safe test they can do. It's called the temperature gun test. A mechanic will start the car, let it get up to temperature, and then use a little infrared temperature gun. You know, the kind you just point and click. They'll aim it at the coolant hose going into the thermostat, and then at the hose coming out. If everything is working right, the temperatures should be pretty similar. But if that inlet hose is scorching hot and the outlet hose is way cooler, that's a dead giveaway. The thermostat is stuck closed. No coolant is getting through. Now, you might hear some people talk about an old school method, one that involves just feeling the hose to check for coolant flow. But I have to stop here and share a very, very important warning that comes directly from the source material for this explainer. And that's really the bottom line. The idea is to squeeze the radiator hose to feel the pressure change, but those hoses get incredibly hot. The risk of getting a severe burn on your hands is just, it's not worth it. The temperature gun is the professional and, most importantly, the safe way to do this. Please, do not try the squeeze test. So, knowing all this, what should you actually do if you think your thermostat has given up? Let's walk through a quick and simple action plan. First things first, do a quick visual check. Is your coolant reservoir at the right level? Second, just pay really close attention to your temperature gauge. Watch for any of that weird behavior we talked about. And third, if you're seeing these signs, the best and safest move is to have a professional mechanic take a look. For a part this critical, you want a proper diagnosis. You know, the really crucial takeaway here is pretty simple. A thermostat is a small part. It's an inexpensive part. but it has a massive, massive impact on the health of your very expensive engine. Ignoring these warning signs can lead to some really serious damage down the road. It really makes you think, doesn't it? The next time your car starts acting funny, just remember, sometimes the absolute biggest problems can come from the smallest, most overlooked parts.